Today we're going to show you how we transform some of our thrift store finds. We usually show you on Saturday nights what we paid for them and what we hauled that week. But today we're going to show you how we actually get them complete and ready for our shop.
All of these finds we're working on today were under $4. Most of them are in the $2 to $3 range. This was $3. This one was $4.
$2.
$1.50.
We're going to separate these out into what's going to be sprayed outside and what's going to be hand painted inside. We've divided up this side into darker items or items that would be hard to brush, or in this case we went with this clock because the clock completely pops out. So we can just spray it and then pop that clock back in. We're also going to be spraying things that would just be a pain in the rump. This is pretty slick, so spraying it's a lot easier. Then we come over here. These are the items that I'm going to be brushing. I always brush my rolling pins because I paint just the ends and I leave the middles raw. This is white already, so I'm going to paint this a darker color and then wet distress that back. This I just wanted to paint a darker color and then do a white wax on. And then this, the clock doesn't come out, so we're gonna take this gold piece off here. I'll hand brush it all and then we'll pop that back on. And then this is gonna be kind of involved. I think we're gonna go ahead and put a mold on here, or a few molds, glue them up, then Zeb will spray it. We'll do a little stencil and a few hooks to make a little hook rack. The first thing we're gonna do is get our molds made out of paper clay and glued down onto this so that way it can be drying and then it will be ready to paint. I'm using my IOD paper clay, and you wanna make sure the clay that you are not using is bagged up because it is made very dry, which is great because it doesn't stick to your molds, but not so great in that it'll dry out quickly. So I'm just gonna take pieces of this, roll it up, so I know that it's gonna fit in my mold, and start mushing it in. I'm rolling this to smooth out this back edge, and there is actually a rim, and you can actually pull against the rim and remove excess clay. And these small detail areas with these scrolls, there is some excess clay on there, and I can pull that off after I roll this out. But I do have most of the excess clay off, and I use my rolling pin just to flatten it so I get a nice flat surface. You're gonna push against the edge of the mold and peel out your impression, and be careful because this is still soft, so it can rip. So now we've got our separate little pieces, and I'm just going to take, and where the rim was, you can just kind of pop off this excess clay. If you're really good, you can get it all off before you pop it out. I'm just not that meticulous. So this is my final layout design. I'm gonna put a thin coat of wood glue all across the back, and then we'll go ahead, secure them, let them dry for a few hours, and they'll be ready to paint. Here's a few tips when you're using molds. If it was a vertical surface, you could use some light tack painter's tape to help hold it in place, but because this will be able to lay flat, we don't need any tape. Another thing that's important is to kind of gently push down on the mold so that way the glue adheres to the surface and also reduces gaps. One thing to keep in mind is that if you want a more perfect impression that won't crack at all, you can go ahead and do the exact same technique using our white resin. The one thing you're gonna keep in mind when you're using the white resin, instead of using wood glue, you're gonna use E6000. I'll have Zeb drop a link below of a video all about pouring resin and how to adhere it. I'm gonna paint my rolling pin. I've got this one taped off. This one is not because it has a little bit of plastic around the edge, so I'm just gonna have to be neat. So I'm just using my Paint Pixie French Round. I'm just gonna paint this edge. This is Hey Sailor, it's a navy blue color, and it covers in one coat. So I'm just gonna put a single coat on this, let it dry, then it'll be ready to distress. So this is a little bit slicker surface, and instead of the raw wood like the handle on the rolling pin, it's gonna have a little bit more of a streaky finish. That's okay, I'll get this first coat on there and then let it dry completely, and then when I put the second coat, we'll get full coverage. I'm painting this with Farm Fresh. It's kind of a duck egg blue, leaning a little bit more green. And it's definitely gonna take 2 coats because this is pretty shiny. And I'm just gonna take my paintbrush on all these detailed spots and just shove the paint kind of down in there. And then when I'm done, I'll come back and use my brush to smooth it out.
Quite a few more pieces made it into the spray pile. I'm going to be spraying them with DIY White Swan out of my 20-ounce HVLP Central Pneumatics sprayer. It's a mouthful, I know. I get them from Harbor Freight. They're about 10 to 15 bucks depending on sales. It's alright that the pile's a little bit bigger. This is not going to take me very long to paint these up with the sprayer. Some people watching this are probably thinking, wow, look at all of that overspray. What you gotta remember is, I watered this down 3 parts paint to 1 part water, and it's only taking me 10 minutes to spray all of these pieces full coverage. So it really kind of washes out. I'm not using that much paint.
So the next step that we did was wet distressing everything. As you can see, everything has been distressed except for this piece, and I just want to show you, for those of you that don't know what wet distress is, I just have a damp, lint-free rag, and I'm just going to go over the details of the piece and pull back the paint.
So this is Mahoney's Finishes. It's a walnut oil that's been heat treated and filtered. It's food safe, and we really like using it for shining up and polishing and conditioning wood that's going to be used with food. You can pick this up on Amazon. That's the best place I've found to get it, and usually ships pretty quick. It can be used to condition the handles too, but you see why I wait until the last to do that. Alright, so we're just going to use some clear wax on this. You can see how it's getting kind of darker as I clear wax it. What's going to happen as that dries is it'll come back a little bit closer to this other finish that's on here, the lighter color. It'll be somewhere in between once it's all dry. Alright, I think we had some white wax in the brush because there is white film all over. So we are going to work with that and then wash the brushes really good after this waxing. So I'm just gonna, I think I got a little much on there. I don't want quite that much. So I've got DIY white wax going on here. And then when I buff this off, this will be a little lighter and just kind of hang in the cracks. Since this is decor, I'm not gonna wait to buff it. I want to make sure that that white wax comes off as much as I want it to. And then if I feel like it needs another coat of wax, I'll go back with clear again over this. But it should be plenty fine. It's going to sit on a shelf. It's really hard to get down in this crack and buff with that rag. So I've got my buff brush here. I'm going to see if I can even this wax out. It may be splotchy for about 24 hours or so as the wax cures, but it'll come back around.
Okay, so we have wet distressed and sealed this with Sweet Pickin's top coat, and now I'm going to go ahead and put a stamp on it. I'm using the IOD Kindest Regards stamp, and I'm just going to use a brayer to bray on the paint on here. I'm using DIY White Swan. This paint dries much quicker than ink. You don't have a lot of play time, so I'm going to work fairly quickly to get it all on the stamp and then put the stamp on here.
Nice.
It's got a lot of natural highs and lows, and that's perfect because I didn't want an exact image. I just wanted the look of the letter. Once it dries all the way, I'll actually distress it just a little bit more. The last step is that we are going to screw on these little hooks here, and it will be a key rack. So I'm using our Farm Life stencil. It comes with animals, but the animals didn't work on here, but the the letters did. So I'm gonna stencil just the letters, and then I'm gonna stamp a pig underneath. I've offloaded my brush so it's almost dry. You can see the white through it. And I do that so that way I don't get a lot of paint on here going under the edge. So you kind of have to go across it, and then you'll come back and do a second pass. So I'm filling up my brush with more little black dress. I'm offloading, and now I'm coming back. So to fill up the extra space, I'm gonna be stamping this pig stamp. It's from our farm animals set that we sell on our website, jamirayvintage.com. I'm gonna use a brayer just like I did with the last stamp, and I'm gonna roll black paint in little black dress, same as I used for the stencil. I'm gonna roll that on my pig. I'm gonna have to work pretty fast because, like I said, this paint dries. So I'm just gonna roll this paint on my stamp. I'm gonna freestyle it and just place it on here. Does that look centered, Sam?
Yeah, close enough.
Once you pick a spot, you are committed. You're gonna press gently without shifting.
So what we thought was going to be a quick little project and knock out a couple little pieces ended up being an all-day thing.
Well, all afternoon, early evening. That's why you're going to be watching this video on a Tuesday instead of a Monday, if you're watching it the day it comes out. I told Zeb, let's take 2 pieces. You do one and I'll do the other. We'll just be real quick because we're working on another big project behind the scenes for another video. And then he just kept bringing stuff out. But the good news is
I kept finding things that were under $4 in the garage. So I'm like, well, this is under $4. Let's paint this. And this is under $4. Let's paint this one.
What you didn't see is that everything that wasn't sealed with a clear wax got a coat of Sweet Pickets top coat in the garage. So it's all ready to go to our shop. These items are going to sell anywhere from the low end of $10.95 all the way up to about $20.
If you want to achieve these looks on any of your own projects around your own house, or you've got the thrifting bug and you've got a bunch of stuff you need to finish, hit up jamiray.vintage.com. We've got all the stuff there and it's in stock.
Be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to Jami Ray Vintage for more
DIY.